Hey everyone, this is Zach at FF Triple Batman. This is the Tripwire podcast. We are the Waiver Wire show for the Triple Play Fantasy team. We will be here every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, right before Monday Night Football, to get you ready for your waiver wire needs as soon as possible. So we are live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and then we will also be dropping a podcast as soon as we're done here tonight on Apple, Spotify, wherever else you get your podcast. So normally it is not just me. I'm usually the host, but my crew has life that they're dealing with right now. And I did want to give a shout out to Alex, who just got married this weekend. He's on his honeymoon now. So enjoy. Congratulations to you and Chantel. And with that, we're going to get right into the waiver wire. So we are looking at 50% or less rostered on Sleeper. And we're going to go position by position. I'm going to give you my top 5 waiver pickups in order, and then I'm going to highlight 2 guys for each position. So we'll get it started right away with the quarterbacks. So number 1, Carson Wentz, 19% rostered. Number 2, Jameis Winston, 50% rostered, just makes that cutoff. Number 3, Marcus Mariota, 17% rostered. Number 4, Daniel Jones, 20% rostered. And number 5, Davis Mills, 14% rostered. So the first quarterback I wanted to kind of talk about just a little bit more is Carson Wentz. So he just came off a 300-plus yard day with 4 touchdowns and 2 terrible interceptions. But still a great game for Carson Wentz. He threw 41 passes, so pretty respectable. And he was willing to throw it deep. And he actually has really solid offensive weapons when you look at his wide receiver core, and Gibson played really well as well. So he gets to go against Detroit in week 2. We just saw the Eagles shred Detroit. Their defense is still a work in progress. So if you just lost Dak Prescott, unfortunately, or maybe you just weren't happy with how your quarterback performed, you can probably pick up Carson Wentz pretty cheap, and I like him against Detroit. Do I like him season long? Probably not, but if you just need someone for this week, Carson Wentz is your guy. And I will say, we typically talk about FAB, how much you should bid on all of these players. For this week, I'm just going to give the caveat that pretty much every player on my list that I'm going to talk about, I probably wouldn't be bidding more than 10% of my FAB unless obviously I'm talking about a standard, just regular, basic 12-team league. Obviously, you know your league settings way better than I do. So if you know that quarterbacks are very rare, you're going to have to bid more. If you know running backs or wide receivers, there's just not as many on the waiver wire than a normal league, then obviously you need to bid higher. But I would say I would not be bidding more than 10% on any of these players that I'm going to talk about. And if you have any questions during the show, please drop them in the comments, especially on YouTube. That's the best spot. Facebook works as well. And I'll try to answer as many waiver wire questions if they come up as we get ready for Monday Night Football. So the other quarterback I wanted to highlight was Marcus Mariota. Like I said, he's 17% rostered. He's got a tough matchup in week 2 at the Los Angeles Rams. But in week 1, he didn't actually look that great as a quarterback. So why am I talking about him? Well, he put up 72 rushing yards, scored a rushing touchdown. So that was 13.2 points from rushing, which would put him second most just behind Hurts, who had 15. So you love that floor. We're going to hope that he plays a little better as a quarterback going forward. But if he's going to be running like that every game, you can't bank on the touchdown. But even 72 yards, I mean, that's 7.2 points right there. You'd like to believe he can at least get you about 15 points a week. Again, not special, but if you're desperate for a quarterback or you just need a little bit of safety, I mean, all he has to do is throw 2 passing touchdowns and you're looking at least 20 points. So Marcus Mariota is probably that cheaper pickup. You can go maybe even like less than 5%. Most of your league will not be paying attention to Marcus Mariota. Moving on to running backs. Number 1, Jeff Wilson, 20% rostered. Number 2, Khalil Herbert, 46% rostered. Number 3, Jalen Warren, 7% rostered. Number 4, Dontrell Hilliard, 13% rostered. And number 5, Rex Burkhead, 15% rostered. So not a lot of we'll call them sexy names there, especially as we got towards the end. But that is what running backs look like right now on the waiver wire. Your hot pickup this week that everyone is going to be talking about is Jeff Wilson and Jaylen Warren. And that's because we found out that that Mitchell is out for probably at least 2 months for San Francisco. And we still haven't heard what's going on with Najee Harris yet, but I would say he's probably going to be out at least a couple weeks if we're being optimistic. So I don't really want to go into too much about Jeff Wilson. A lot of other people will be talking about him. You kind of know who he is already. He isn't that great of running back. He does pretty well in the goal line, and you like the San Francisco rushing attack. Though if you want to get a little sneaky pickup, I'll throw in a couple extra guys. Is Tyrion Davis-Price, who was a week 1 scratch. He's the 3rd-round rookie they drafted. And then he's 90% rostered. Jordan Mason is 4% rostered. He did play in week 1. However, Jeff Wilson took all of the snaps after Mitchell was out. So my guess is TDP and Mason will be fighting it out for the number 2 spot. I think TDP was out because he was not a special teams player, and so they just couldn't carry that many running backs on the 53-man roster. But we will find out in week 2 where that pecking order is. I did want to highlight Khalil Herbert. We have talked about him a lot this offseason. He is 46% rostered. He's going against Green Bay this week. Tough matchup. But the big thing I want to highlight is Montgomery had 65% of the running back carries, which you would be thinking to yourself, why am I talking about Khalil Herbert if he is clearly the number 2 running back? Well, that's because last year, with a different coaching regime, Montgomery dominated the touches when he was a starter. Herbert barely touched the ball at all, barely even got on the field, except for when Montgomery was hurt last year. So the fact that Herbert got that many carries in week 1 with a different coaching regime tells me that Herbert's going to see more work this season, and there's a chance that as the season goes on, he could continue to increase his workload. The other big thing to note was that Herbert had 2 goal line carries in this game in week 1, and Montgomery did not have a single one. So I would definitely try to stash Herbert. I wouldn't plan on playing him right away, but if you can stash him on your bench, if you can afford that on your roster, he could pay off in a few weeks. And then the other running back I want to highlight is the other hot pickup this week will be Jaylen Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was the clear number 2 running back behind Najee Harris. Najee Harris has a foot injury. We're still waiting for more details of how long he'll be out. But after Harris went out, Warren had all of the running back snaps. So he is the clear number 2. He's now the clear number 1. He looked solid in pass protection in the limited time we saw him. But unfortunately, that offensive line with the Steelers is just not good. We already knew that, but without them improving, and I don't expect them to, I don't know how effective Warren will be, even if he's getting a lot of snaps and a lot of touches. So caution there, but I understand the pickup. All right. So I got a question from Albert. So for those of you who can't see it, if you're listening on the podcast, is who's a better QB replacement for Dak, Tua or Jameis? That's a great question. I probably lean. Honestly, I love both of the offensive weapons. For now, I'm going to go with Jameis Winston. I think he has a better schedule. But this week is a tough matchup. But if I'm looking long term, I'm going to lean Jameis Winston. But honestly, I don't think you can go bad between Tua or Jameis. I just feel more comfortable with Jameis. Another question we got from Ignatius. Should I trade CeeDee Lamb, Antonio Gibson, and Amon-Ra St. Brown for Stephon Diggs and Mike Williams? He's solid at running back. So if you're trading away CeeDee Lamb, Gibson, and Amon-Ra for Stephon Diggs and Mike Williams, then I would do it. I'm assuming that's what you mean by you're solid at running back, which means Gibson is probably your 3rd running back based on how drafts went. So yeah, I would absolutely get. I'm a Cowboys fan, but if you can get out of CeeDee Lamb and you're upgrading to Stephon Diggs, absolutely. And Mike Williams will have a bounce back. So I would definitely make that trade if you're getting the Stephon Diggs side. All right, keep the questions coming if you guys have any. Happy to answer them as we go through. But we're going to move on to wide receiver on the waiver wire. So in order, number 1, Joshua Palmer, 29% rostered. Number 2, Donovan Peoples-Jones, 13% rostered. Number 3, Curtis Samuel, 12% rostered. Number 4, Isaiah McKenzie, 45% rostered. And number 5, Zay Jones, 13% rostered. So we have a couple of repeats from previous weeks talking about Palmer and McKenzie. So I don't want to highlight them this week, but still like them a lot. And that's why they're on the list. So I wanted to highlight Donovan Peoples-Jones, 30% rostered. He gets the New York Jets in Cleveland this week. So coming into the Monday Night Football, obviously I'm recording this right before Monday Night Football. He is the 4th highest target share of all wide receivers with a 37% target share, tied with Cooper Kupp, who had that on their bingo scorecard for this week, and he had 11 targets. He was second on the team for snap share. He was behind Njoku, and he was tied with Amari Cooper with 82%. So he was on the field plenty. And for those of you who don't remember who Donovan Peoples-Jones is, I understand he has not done much in the NFL so far, but he's 6'2", and according to Player Profile, he has a 100th percentile burst score. So he is athletic. He can beat you with speed down the field. And honestly, he looked pretty good this week. Now, I know he has Brissett as his quarterback. I get it. But the fact that he saw such a significant target share is at least worth rostering, not to start. And then let's see how this progresses over the next couple of weeks. And if it ends up being a 1-week wonder, you just drop him. But now's the time to grab him when you see that kind of target share. The other wide receiver that I wanted to highlight is Curtis Samuel. He gets Detroit this week, and we just saw what the Eagles did to Detroit, so I love that matchup. But in week 1, he ran 83% of the routes, which was the 3rd wide receiver on the team, but he had a 28% target share, which was the 1st wide receiver on his team, and that was by a lot. It wasn't close. He dominated target share in week 1 for the Commanders. He had a 71% snap share, which is solid. But what really was interesting was he had a 14% rush share. So the team manufactured a lot of touches for him, which is what you want to see with anybody that you are trying to start. So he played 67% of his snaps from the slot, and he had an average depth of target of 1.3, which is very short. But he did average 6.1 yards after catch per reception. So you like to see that. So Curtis Samuel, for those of you who also don't remember him, very talented coming out of college. He's kind of one of those gadget players, very fast. He just couldn't stay healthy. So while he is healthy, he seems to be having a solid role on the Commanders. Go ahead and pick him up, stash him. Let's see how he holds up. But I would not expect him to stay healthy all season, unfortunately, because that's just a track record that he has given us. All right. So moving on to tight ends. Honestly, this is going to be the weakest group of the waiver wire just because tight ends are just so hit or miss. Honestly, you're just hoping for a touchdown at this point. And week 1 was rough on tight ends. Other than Travis Kelce, I don't think any of the big name tight ends really scored crazy. I mean, Mark Andrews was fine, but definitely didn't put up Mark Andrews fantasy point numbers you were hoping for. So number 1, we have Robert Tonyan, 34% rostered. Number 2, Logan Thomas, 11% rostered. Number 3, Hayden Hurst, 22% rostered. Number 4, Taysom Hill, 11% rostered. And number 5, Gerald Everett, 34% rostered. All right, so I wanted to highlight Hayden Hurst because I just don't feel like we talk about him a lot. He had a 75% snap share, which you love to see. 78% routes ran. You love to see that. And he had the 4th most tight end targets in week 1 with 8. Now, I do want to preface that the Bengals had 100 plays in week 1 since they went to almost an entire overtime. But for a offense that has a lot of passing weapons, you feel like Hurst might kind of shy away there, and I get it. But he looked very athletic. He made a lot of great plays. And, I mean, I like to be tied to that offense. So they get Dallas this week. The defense was okay in Dallas in week 1, but that team's just a mess right now as they're trying to figure out their quarterback situation. So I like Hurst as a pickup if you really just need to grab a tight end this week. Taysom Hill, I also wanted to highlight. So he did not get that much work. It was a 26% snap share. That was 6th on the team. He ran 10% of routes, so he wasn't really used that much going downfield. But he did have a 21% rush share. So as a someone who rosters Kamara, you're not going to like to see that. But he did make the most of it, making some big plays. So if you are able to play him at tight end, you like that, I guess, versatility of how he can throw the ball, he can catch it, he can run it. But he is very volatile with that amount of work on the field. So you want to see him getting more snaps, more touches to be more consistent. But he is kind of that, because he made those big plays this week, people are going to be talking about Taysom Hill. So I get it if you want to pick him up, but I would not expect him to be a consistent tight end for you. And then for our DST stream of the week, we are going to repeat last week. So if you missed week 1, we told you Cleveland Browns. We're going to go back to it again because they're still only 22% rostered. Why are we picking them? Well, they get the New York Jets this week at home. So you love that matchup, going against that offensive line with their defensive line. And then in week 3, they're going against Pittsburgh at home. Again, you love that matchup with their offensive line going against Cleveland's defensive line. And then week 4, they're going to Atlanta. So another great matchup. So Cleveland is one of those teams, if you didn't pick them up last week like we told you to, pick them up this week, and you can carry them for a few more weeks and not have to worry about your DST. All right. So that is the show for today. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully the whole crew will be back next week for week 3. We will be with you guys live every Monday night, 8 p.m., getting you ready for waivers. So make sure you subscribe to the Triple Play Fantasy YouTube channel. We have a lot of great content coming out. Our main show, the Triple Play Fantasy Football show, is every Tuesday at 6:30. We are just the waiver wire portion for them. So make sure you are subscribing so you don't miss any of that. We already have basketball content coming out, baseball going on, and we have just a lot of other fun stuff on the feed. And go ahead and follow us all on Twitter. Is the Tripwire Pod on Twitter. I'm also at FF Batman. And then you have the Trip Play Fantasy on Twitter as well. So thank you all. Enjoy Monday Night Football, and we'll see you guys next week.